What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla stock, what you should be watching for going forward. I'm going to talk about SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. Break down what the news, data, and technicals are telling us about the markets and Tesla, what you should be watching for going forward as I break down important levels and what the technicals are suggesting. Before I break anything down about why tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day, as we have lots of data coming out and Jerome Powell giving another testimony, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $100 cash reward with additional benefits. The offer ends in just about 9 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so Tesla had a very interesting day. This thing started selling off in the morning as we had Jerome Powell saying some hawkish things, some things the market didn't like, and also Tesla got hit with some negative news as Barclays has downgraded their rating on Tesla. This caused Tesla to sell off quite sharply as the day went on. However, Tesla found support at the 200 EMA on the 30-minute time frame. Tesla tried to bounce off this, and then around this period right here, I told you guys in another video that, in my penultimate video, by the way, that if Tesla managed to continue to break above this resistance, we're going to be watching 262. If it broke that, we're going to be watching about 265, and we could see Tesla get a bounce here. But I also warned you that if Tesla got that small little pump, there's no guarantee it's going to continue to pump because there's no confirmation. We can't just look at a very short move like this when it was selling off so hard for all this time. So it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to turn like super bullish or bearish just based off that. And I just told you which levels to watch for. And as a result, Tesla pushed about 265, but it got a rejection in that zone or very close to it before it started to sell off again. However, Tesla closed right above the 200 EMA, and it was still trying to hold up near the end of the day. But as we hit the after hours, Tesla ended up selling off below the 200 EMA, and it's currently below that right now, which is another bearish signal. Now, even though we are getting some bearish signals on Tesla, yes, they are valid, but they're not officially or like as strong right now in a way because things depend a lot on Jerome Powell and other catalysts for tomorrow morning. And I want to break that down because we have Jerome Powell giving another testimony tomorrow, and it's going to be very impactful for the markets. But before that happens, we have other data coming out. In the morning, we have one Fed speaker known as Waller giving a speech. Then we have initial jobless claims coming out. We want about 271,000. We want this to be very close to the forecast. We don't want it to be way too high. If it's too high, that's going to be negative for the economy. If it's too low, this may incentivize the Fed to be more hawkish, as Jerome Powell was saying. So we want this to be very close to the forecast. And the same thing is going to be said about other, pieces of data coming out involving the jobs numbers. And then after that, we have Bowman from the Fed giving a speech. We have more Fed speakers and data coming out throughout the day. But the most important thing for tomorrow is going to be Jerome Powell giving a speech at 10 o'clock a.m. After the market opens, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, 30 minutes after open. You have to be ready for this. But what's going on, just to clarify, today Jerome Powell spoke in front of the House Financial Services Committee, and he gave some very important remarks. I will break down some of his remarks in just a couple of minutes. But then tomorrow, he's going to be speaking in front of the Senate Banking Committee. I have one little concern about this because today when Powell was speaking, the market held up for the majority of the time. But then once these congressional members, people who were part of the committee from the House, started to ask him questions about the banking situation, the market started to sell off more because Powell was being quite hawkish. He did talk about Silicon Valley Bank and say that, once again, the Fed could have been better at regulating the situation. It could have helped limit some of the losses. And as a result, the market sold off because of that. So now tomorrow, he's going to be speaking in front of the Senate's Banking Committee. So if they do ask a lot of questions and start talking about Silicon Valley Bank, that could lead to some downside. But let me just remind you guys that typically when Powell speaks 2 days in a row, the first day, we tend to see the market being a lot more volatile. And during the second day, the market tends to be very choppy and slow down a bit. So we might see something like that tomorrow. Maybe the market's going to be more choppy tomorrow. But if he makes these little comments about the banking situation or he says more hawkish things, that could still slow down the market. I also want to remind you guys that Powell has been more hawkish lately. He stated that the Fed expects more hikes for the next coming FOMC meetings. He implied that this is just going to be a skip. He also talked about how the battle with inflation is going to be very long. There's still a lot of work to be done. And he talked about how the labor market is still tight, but there are conditions that are loosening right now. So overall, most of what he said has been more on the hawkish side. He talked about how the Fed has a lot of work to be done. Inflation is still too high, especially on the core side. Then he talked about how the monetary supply is still contracting, and this in turn could lead to tighter conditions going forward. Powell also talked about very important things about the jobs markets, how the Fed is very committed to fighting inflation, and they are willing to cause pain to get there. He made that very clear, so please be ready for that. Finally, Jerome Powell mentioned that when it comes to the banking situation, there will be losses, unfortunately. He said that there will be losses, and it is very unfortunate. This was one of the most hawkish things I heard Powell say in a while, and the market did not like it when he said that. We saw the market sell off a bit, but he was optimistic because he believed that the losses could be managed quite well by the Fed and that things are going to be okay for the longer term. Now, all of that had a big effect on the markets. Just to clarify, Powell is very likely going to be a little hawkish tomorrow. He's been more hawkish so far. Most of what he said has been in the middle, but some things have been more hawkish. And he's said very little dovish things, to be honest with you guys. On top of that, you have to be ready for what the banking committee is going to say, because when he was talking about the banks today, we saw more selling pressure. So please be ready for that. Now, when it comes to Tesla, there was a lot of news coming out about Ford's CEO Farley, who is saying things about the Cybertruck. Honestly, guys, I don't really care about this. This is just making all these headlines. I want to just discuss this and mention that it doesn't matter too much what anyone says. The Cybertruck has tons of reservations. It's going to get lots of sales, in my opinion. It's going to be huge for Tesla. Elon Musk told us that this is going to be one of Tesla's best cars ever, if not their best car in history. Their best truck, if anything. It's their only truck with their vehicle. It's still very, very awesome news for them. Elon Musk is telling us that don't worry about this. We should not worry whatsoever about what anyone says. No matter what the headlines try to say, they are competing with Tesla. Farley and Ford are competing with the Cybertruck, so don't worry about what they say. It's still going to be fine. Elon Musk also hinted at Tesla entering India as soon as next year. He met up with Prime Minister Modi from India. He said he's a fan of Modi, and he said that he wants Tesla to enter India as soon as possible. So he's very, very optimistic and very open to opening up in India. Why is that? Because India has a lot of comparative advantages and specializes in different things. India has a big, big, big branch of engineers that could benefit Tesla. It has a lot of opportunity. The labor there is more affordable for a company like Tesla, and that's just one of the many benefits. But Tesla will, in my opinion, still pay people decently. I just want to make that clear. But the bottom line is it does benefit Tesla technically, at least from a business standpoint and from an economic point of view. And on top of that, there are other benefits such as the resources that Tesla could take advantage of. There's a lot of sunshine over there, and there are just so many other things. There's also a relatively large market there that could be tapped into. I think they're still working on that, on lots of development phases for that. But like I said before, there's a lot of benefits to it, and I think that this would be a very big positive development for Tesla going forward. And if they do make an announcement like this, it would be very bullish. That's good news from Elon Musk. Now, there was also some talk about Tesla purchasing wireless charging, or at least a company that does that. Honestly, guys, this is just a rumor. It's not a guarantee, but there's been a lot of possible evidence about this during Tesla's latest earnings report. I don't know for sure, though, so we'll just have to wait and see on this. If this is announced, it's going to be very bullish news for Tesla. It's going to incentivize more people to buy Teslas because that's a very, very awesome feature. Now, I don't know for sure if this will come out in the future. There is talk about this, so it's a possibility. If it does happen, awesome news. If it doesn't, we'll just wait and see. But still, this would be nothing but good for Tesla in my eyes. Now, something that was negative for Tesla and contributed to Tesla getting a sell-off was Barclays is giving Tesla a downgrade. They're saying that investors should secure their profits on Tesla. It's likely going to see downside. And this is right after Cathie Wood sold some of her shares at or very close to where the top was. Now, Cathie Wood did that as a result of repositioning, putting money for other tickers, other opportunities like Coinbase. She was talking about Bitcoin and Coinbase and other things like that. That does not mean that she's given up on Tesla. She does this all the time. She buys and sells all the time. But this downgrade had a negative effect on Tesla and its performance for today, underperforming relative to the market. Is it the end of the world? Not necessarily, because Tesla still has potential to bounce, but I will discuss that in just a couple of minutes. Look at the Model 3. Listings appear to have dropped. Is it because they're not counting? I'm not 100% sure. I tried to look this up. I didn't find anything yet. Or is it because they're getting a big amount of sales? I'll have to double check on that. But I do know that the Model X did see a big increase in sales. So did the Model S, and then the Model Y did see that as well. But I don't know about the Model 3 yet. Could it be because of the refresh that they're getting rid of inventory? Or could it be because they're actually getting these sales? I'm not as sure about this. It does not seem realistic that they sold this many in such a short period of time. But when the refresh comes, I think this is going to be very bullish for the Model 3 and for Tesla moving forward. So we'll have to wait and see on this for now. And until then, I still think things are looking pretty decent for Tesla's next deliveries report, which is coming out in about like 10 or so days, 10 to 11 days, maybe something like that. Now, when it comes to Tesla, what else is interesting is Tesla had high volume, so a lot of selling pressure today, high volume selling. And we started to see the short volume going up again for today. So lots of shorting was going on. Short volume started to increase on Tesla. And we started to see the price price ratio start to decline a bit over the last couple of days, especially today more than anything. Barclays went from saying Tesla's going to outperform the market to saying now it's going to perform equally with the market. Still got a big sell off from this 274 area when it opened up, and that pressure brought it down quite hard. We probably saw another increase in the short interest. It probably is not going to show yet, but once again, it's very likely that shorts piled in and we started to see short volume increase, high volume selling, and all of this had a negative effect on Tesla. Historically, Tesla tends to be a little bit weak on Thursdays. We're only green about 48% of the time, but don't forget that June tends to be a very strong month, and during the second and fourth hours, Tesla tends to perform the best historically. Now, looking at some data, I just want to remind you guys that right here, I do have a suspicion about the market. Not a guarantee. I'm not like 100% fixated on this just yet because it depends on Powell. But I suspect that what might happen to SPY is we may see, a little bit more selling pressure because of Powell and a little bit of like sideways price action, lots of chop. But the market may get a bounce by the time we approach Friday because we have lots of puts expiring. We have a 2.83 put to call ratio. We have over 730,000 puts expiring and under 270,000 calls expiring. So overall, the majority of positions expiring for Friday are going to be on the put side, and Max Payne's at 439, which is very close to where we are. There's a good chance the market may get a bounce as we approach this date, and we may see the market makers try to close us above Max Payne for Friday. But before that happens, right, before we get any news for Friday, any moves for Friday, we have to get past Thursday, and Thursday is going to be a little bit capricious because of Jerome Powell and the Fed. So it's going to be a little tricky to predict, but let me just break down some levels on SPY and Tesla for you guys. Let's start off with Tesla. So for Tesla, here's what you're going to be watching for. Now, we have some negative news, unfortunately. Tesla did break below the 200 EMA on the 30-minute time frame, so it did lose some support in the after hours. But it is holding above 256 for the time being. If Tesla wants to push up, let's first talk about the levels. I'm going to talk about what I think is going to happen. First off, if Tesla tries to push up, we're going to be watching resistance at 258, which is where the 200 EMA is. 257.5, and if it breaks these, you're going to be watching 260. Break 260, then there's 262.5, 265. 265 is where the resistance zone is, and also the 50 EMA. Then we have 268, 270, then 272, and 275. If Tesla breaks down, okay, if it starts to break down, you're going to be watching support around 255. And if that fails us, there is some support at 254.25, 252.5, which is not as significant. If it breaks below 254, we're most likely going to see this just go to like 250, in my opinion. 250 is going to be pivotal for Tesla. It needs to try to hold that. If it fails to hold it, it's going to be all the way back down to 247 quite quickly. So we're going to be watching these levels very carefully. Now, from a technical standpoint, it's looking a little bit more bearish. There's a possible head and shoulders development, but it's a little hard to make that call because it depends a lot on what Powell says. When it comes to the market, okay, I'm not sure exactly how Friday is going to go, but I do have this suspicion that the market may sell off a bit. We may see lots of sideways price action, but we could get a bounce for Friday, one of those like short squeeze days again. It is a possibility. We're going to watch for confirmation just to be safe. And I don't know for sure if that's going to happen. I do suspect it's a possibility. I'm not as confident in that claim just yet because we have to wait for Jerome Powell and see how the market performs tomorrow. But I think it's a real possibility. I want to just remind you guys about this and warn you about this early on. But before it happens, before we get any possible like bounce for Friday or anything like that, we may see more selling pressure for tomorrow because of Jerome Powell. I don't know what he's going to say, but he has been a lot more hawkish lately, and he has been talking about the banks in not the best of light in a way. So this could lead to some downside for Tesla and the whole market again. So we're going to be watching a lot of these very important levels, especially around 256. Are we going to like gap up in the morning uh, off some news and then start pushing down again because of Powell? It's a real possibility. It's very likely. I am expecting something like that to happen. Maybe it like gaps up a little, then starts pushing down, and we just see lots of sideways price action. It may even cool off a bit more because of Jerome Powell. I just don't know what he's going to say, so I can't really make an accurate prediction about what he's going to say exactly or how it's going to affect the markets. I don't know the extremity of his words or things like that. But I do suspect that even if we do sell off more, we may get a nice balance by the time we either approach Friday or early next week. Maybe as soon as Friday, we might see Tesla make a nice bounce. That's what my prediction is. But once again, my predictions could always change depending on technicals, and that's where I'm leaning for now. And I will update you guys if I do have a change of mind, but for now, that's what I'm leaning towards. So it may drop more, and then we could see a very big reaction later on. But always watch support and resistance and get ready for what Powell ends up saying tomorrow. It's going to be very important. For SPY, we're going to be watching support and resistance. For resistance, watch 435 because we are a little bit below it right now. If it breaks above that, watch 436, 436.32, 436.25, 32, 49, and then like 64. So we have a lot of resistance around the 436s. If it gets above 437, it's going to most likely push 438. If it breaks that, 440 is likely going to come. Then 442 is the next major resistance zone. If it breaks to the downside, you're going to be watching support at 434. Very important support. If that fails us, 433 is going to come. If 433 fails, there's some support at 432. Then after that comes 430. I don't think SPY is going to come all the way down to 430, but once again, I'm going to try to be like careful. But I'm leaning in the direction that we might see a little bit more downside. Technicals are still looking kind of weak because of Powell. Maybe it doesn't drop that hard all the way down to like 430, but we could see like 433 being tested. And then I'm going to be looking for a potential bounce because I know those market makers, they're going to want the market to hold up nicely for Friday because of all those put expirations. Do they always win? Not always, but typically they do win on those Fridays, and it's very likely they may try something like that. I just want to inform you guys in advance. We still have more downside likely coming because of Powell, but things could change for Friday, and I will update you guys in case I have a change of opinion. But so far, I am leaning in that direction. For AMD, this is looking like a decent short. If it breaks below, I saw an EMA. Let me just double check. I think it's the 4 hour, 30-minute EMA. Yeah, so the 30-minute, sorry, the 4 hour, excuse me, guys, the 4 hour 200 EMA, that one right over there. We're going to be watching that carefully. If it breaks below this, it's going to come all the way down to this imbalance at around 108. It has a really good shorting opportunity if it breaks below the 200. If it bounces off the 200, depending on the news, it has potential to make its way back up to about 118. So it is in the middle. I am leaning in the direction that's going to cool off, though it looks very distributive, forming a double top like formation. And I'm saying this also based off Jerome Powell. Powell may cause the market to slow down even more as he's going to be speaking to the Senate committee. And we have like an M shape. So I think the odds favor this thing coming down to 108, but we have to wait for confirmation if it breaks below the 4 hour 200 EMA. And I think the odds favor that. But I'm always going to be open minded nonetheless. For NEO, it may slow down because of Powell. So we're going to be watching $9, 8.8, 8.6, and 8.45. If it pushes up, watch the resistance around the 9.25, 9.5, and potentially around it getting close to about $10 if it breaks above all of that. For now, it's still kind of in the middle. I do think it's going to sell off in the morning. It could bounce intraday after Powell is done speaking. And I forgot to mention that the market may sell off a bit when Powell speaks, but also bounce later on when he's done speaking. That's what typically has happened, but there's no guarantee it's going to be that violent. It really depends on what he says, right? That's going to be very impactful. For the QQQ, this thing is holding up above 360 for now. If it turns bullish, watch 362, 363, 364.69, 366, 368, and 370 as resistance. The more important resistance is going to be around 370 and also around 363 because we just broke below that. If we sell off, 360 is going to be very important support. If that fails us, 357.5 is going to be important. Then it's going to likely come all the way down to about the 355s if it breaks below 357. In my opinion, it looks more bearish for now from a technical standpoint. I think Powell may cause more volatility, maybe a slight slowdown here and there if he says things about the banks. But there's a big but. When he's done speaking, maybe the market tries to bounce a little bit. And then we're going to see what happens for Friday. You guys know what I'm thinking. We may get another squeeze. If I still hold that belief, I will share it tomorrow. If not, if I have a change in mind, depending on the news or something, that could always happen. But I will inform you guys about that tomorrow. Just know that for now, the technicals look more bearish, and there's a good chance Powell may slow the markets down again. For the NASDAQ, there's a possible head and shoulders like formation, but not a guarantee because, we did this before and it didn't really play out all the time. Technicals look bearish on the NASDAQ and may continue to see some downside because of Powell, but there's this gap above. So I don't know if it's going to come down and try to bounce later on or not. For now, it looks bearish, so we're just going to go with that for the time being, and we will see what happens with Powell. Same thing with SPX. It has a gap above, though, so I don't know if it's going to get a bounce and then try to fill this gap later on. It seems very likely that's going to happen, in my opinion. But I'm going to wait for confirmation, wait and see what happens after Powell speaks before becoming more confident. The dollar is down a bit, which could be a good sign for the markets. The VIX it's sold off a bit. It all depends on Powell at this point. This is still in the 13 area. It could drop even lower. There's just no true sign of a bounce. It's about to get a bearish cross in the 4-hour time frame. But it is forming a bullish divergence still. So I don't know if it's going to bounce a little bit yet. There's just not really a true confirmation of it. Maybe it bounces a little bit tomorrow and then it just starts to sell off more. I mean, it's not really giving us a clear direction just yet. For Coinbase, it's looking bullish to me. I've been saying this for the last couple of trading days. Actually, for the last week, I've been saying Coinbase is bullish. It came to this imbalance. It's going to be fighting for 60. If it breaks 60, it could come all the way up to 64, like almost 64, maybe a little bit under, which is where the next imbalance level happens to be. I think Coinbase is going to cool off a bit thanks to Powell, but it has potential to bounce, and it's still holding up nicely. The 4 hours still looks strong, still holding up. And I think Powell could help this out. For Alibaba, this thing is trying to hover above the 200. It is breaking down a little bit, so it may gap down tomorrow, slow down a bit because of Powell, but it could bounce later on with the market, and we could see this thing make its way up to 88 plus. For Aapl, we're going to be watching this carefully. If it breaks down, support's going to be very close to 182. So 182.94, basically in this range. So specifically like 182.5 to 182.94 is going to be support. It could test that first. It is looking bearish on the 4-hour time frame. If it breaks even lower than that, then 180 is going to be the next major level. If it bounces and tries to push up, 185, 186, 186.5, and 187.5 are major resistances. I think Aapl has a little more downside to come. Maybe Powell's going to cause it to cool off a bit, but this thing may make an attempt to bounce later on. For Friday, it's a possibility because of all the shorts, but like I said before, we'll see what happens by Friday. I will tell you by Thursday night. For now, it looks a little more bearish and it is going to likely see some downside because of Powell, lots of choppy price action because of Powell, and then we will be patient until then. For Nvda, same thing. This thing is, once again, still coming down. We may get a retest of 420. Could try to bounce if off this level and get a back test of this like 435 area because on the 30-minute time frame, I was looking at this. It's still holding above the 200, but it has some resistance around this 431 area. So I think it's going to be a little just sideways, but it could try to bounce and get a back test of 435. Could it be forming like a head and shoulders? That's a possibility, but not a guarantee. My gut tells me that this thing is going to trade sideways with Powell, drop a bit, bounce after he's done speaking, get a back test of very close to like 435 or so. And then we're going to get a reaction, maybe something similar to what happened today, and then a bigger reaction for Friday. Could see another pump for Friday. It is still a possibility. For Google, we're kind of in the middle. We're still continuing to sell off. I told you guys a big move is coming on Google. It was getting very tight, and the big move came to the downside. This thing sold off quite significantly. If it breaks below 120, we're going to be watching this thing get closer to about 118. If this thing ends up breaking below that, it has more downside to get to about 115. If it pushes up, we're going to be watching 122.61, 123.76, and potentially 125. That all depends on what Powell says. Amazon's also getting very tight, not really picking a big direction. I think it was sandwiched somewhere in one of these EMAs. So it is sandwiched between the 1 hour 15 200. Breaks below the 200, we're going to be watching 123.85, then potentially 122.5 and 120. If it pushes to the upside, watch resistance around 125.54, 126.73, and potentially 128 after that. It's in the middle for now, so we're just going to wait and be very patient. But until then, just do what you have to do. For Meta, we are still once again getting very, very tight. I think a big move is yet to come. It may happen as soon as tomorrow. So I have like these trend lines we could draw out, actually draw it out like this. Am I missing something? Let me just double check. I'm not actually missing anything. Meta is still respecting this trend, like just like this. It's getting tighter, getting very, very tight. So I'm expecting a very big move. I don't know if some news is about to come out that's about to like drop this thing or not, but for now it's looking like this. Once again, you could even extend this line. I don't really have to at this point. It's in this like pennant like formation. If it breaks to the upside, watch resistance around 284. If it breaks that, 287.75 is going to come, and then 290 plus if it breaks to the upside. If it comes to the downside, there's 280, 276, 272, 270, 269, and beyond after that. We'll see which direction it breaks, and it's just getting tighter and tighter. It may even just get a very choppy day tomorrow, but then we'll see the direction. And until then, I mean, if it does break to the upside, maybe Friday could be the time it happens. If not, it's likely just going to get very tight, and we just need to watch for confirmation for the time being. Could depend on the news and stuff like that too. But until then, guys, as for Tesla, we're likely going to see some choppy price action. Technicals do look a little bit more bearish for the time being. We may see some more downside because of Powell and all these like Fed speakers temporarily, but there is potential for this thing to bounce later on as we have an interesting day for Friday coming up. If my opinion changes, I will tell you guys in advance, but just know for now there is a risk for more downside looking at the technicals and what Jerome Powell says. With that said, thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day, and I'll most definitely see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to have some merch for you guys if you want to buy like a tank top or a hoodie or something like that. It's up to you. And with that said, Tesla in the market to the moon. The long term is very bright, and peace out.